Hello, I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar about updates on organic crop insurance options and ways to increase soil health to reduce risks, presented by Haley Barron, Mark Lipson, and Mark Schonbeck of the Organic Farming Research Foundation. The presenters are working from home for the most part, so we hope that our internet connections will run smoothly without interruptions, and we also hope that everyone in our audience today is safe and healthy. eOrganic publishes free articles, videos, and webinars about organic farming and research, and you can find all of them on our new website at eorganic.org and on the eOrganic YouTube channel. So with that, I'm just going to hand things over to our first presenter, Haley Barron, and give her control of the screen. So Haley, you have control now, so if you just click on the screen once, that'll activate it.
All right. Hi, everyone. I always do that. Sorry.
That's okay. It happens to everyone.
Let's see. There we go. Hi, everyone. That's me. I'm actually at Swanton Berry Farm, not so far from where I live. I'm calling in from San Francisco. So I'm really excited to be here with everyone. And I wanted to first start by welcoming everyone and just say that this is a stressful time, and we recognize that and want to be as supportive as possible. If that means you need to hop off or hop back on, please do so, whatever you need to be safe and healthy and be there for your family during these times. And our goal today is to set you all up with updates for future planning for your business during these difficult times. So we're going to really try and make this as applicable to you as possible. But please ask questions, please ask for clarifications in the chat, etc. I'm going to start by giving you a quick update, or excuse me, a quick intro to OFRF, the Organic Farming Research Foundation. We started in 1990. This is our 30th year functioning, and our goal is to foster the improvement and widespread adoption of organic farming systems. And our vision is that organic farming is the leading form of agriculture because we believe that it leads to healthy and resilient people, ecosystems, and economies. And it's interesting reading that vision aloud right now because it seems even more real and even more needed to be thinking about resiliency during these difficult times. So we do this through a few different mechanisms. We have a lot of information on our website, so please feel free to go to ofrf.org and check out all of our webinars and guidebooks and trainings. It's all free and available for you. We also have a research grant program where we offer seed grants to folks to do research in organic farming that we've been doing, I believe, for 20, I think actually maybe 30 of all 30 years that OFRF has been functioning. We also have an annual forum where we bring people together across North America to discuss organic research. We do a lot of advocacy locally in California, but also on the Hill to advance organic agriculture and organic research. We right now are in the middle of conducting a national organic farmer and rancher survey for certified organic growers as well as transitioning growers. So if you fit either of those categories, we encourage you to go to our website and take the survey so that we can learn about your research challenges and help you, sorry, I'm losing my thought, better handle those problems in the future and those challenges and make that part of our agenda moving forward. Let's see. Today, though, we are going to be focusing on reducing risk, mostly through crop insurance, and we'll also be discussing some work we've done in soil health. These are two guidebooks that were written the last year or two that focus on these topics in much more detail. They're both free and available on our website, so I encourage you to go and look at them. We've also done 2 updates to these guidebooks. that are also on our website. And one of them, particularly the one on crop insurance, really focuses in on the updates from the 2018 Farm Bill, which will be a major focus today. So to get started, I want to quickly introduce our speakers and just give you a quick intro to the goal for today. Our goal is to give you, like I said, the recent updates to crop insurance and soil health measures from the Farm Bill to help you be planning effectively, particularly if you're an organic or transitioning farmer and rancher. And we hope that these updates that we'll be giving today will help you reduce on-farm risk and feel better equipped to handle challenges. And this is a particularly interesting timing to be having this webinar, since I'm sure many of you are thinking about how to be reducing risk across your growing systems, across your business planning, etc. So we're gonna start off with Mark Lipson, who is going to be focusing on organic crop insurance, like I mentioned, mainly from the 2018 Farm Bill, and focusing on the updates that may affect you. So to give a quick intro to Mark Lipson, Mark is currently, since 2016, staff affiliate for Organic Policy Studies at UC Santa Cruz Center for Agroecology and Sustainable Food Systems. He still gets his hands dirty as a partner in Molino Creek Farm in Davenport, California, not so far from where that photo of me was taken in the beginning. He was policy director at the Organic Farming Research Foundation and was the first USDA Organic and Sustainable Ag Policy Advisor. And we're just really honored to have Mark. He's been a part of our sphere for a very long time, much longer than before I entered OFRF. So we're really excited to have him. After Mark speaks, we're gonna have Mark Schonbeck speak, also someone who's a huge part of our network. And it looks like my bio of Mark has disappeared. Where is it? Oh, here it is. So Mark is going to be talking about his expertise, which is soil health, as many of you all know. Mark has been a leader for us as our soil scientist and consultant and writer and editor of many of our guidebooks. Mark has worked for 33 years as a researcher, consultant, and educator in sustainable and organic agriculture. For the last 5 years, Mark has been on the Organic Farming Research Foundation's top soil health researcher and writer. He has participated in on-farm research and into mulching, cover crops, minimum tillage, and nutrient management for organic vegetables. For many years, he has written for the Virginia Association for Biological Farming newsletter and served as their policy liaison to NSAC. So like I mentioned, Mark Lipson, our first Mark, will start us off, and then Mark Schonbeck will finish us off with an update on soil health. So I'll send it over to you, Mark Lipson. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Haley. Hopefully you all can hear me okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. So this slide shows the topics that we're going to cover, each of them fairly briefly. These are all aspects of crop insurance that were modified in the 2018 Farm Bill. And we're going to just locate where each of those was in the Farm Bill and give you what updates we know on how the specific changes have been implemented. I do want to point out, as we're getting started, that the 2020 crop insurance year, is already basically contracted. That is, the deadlines for getting crop insurance in 2020 have mostly all passed. Might be a couple locations in the country where that's not true because it does vary by region, but for almost all types of crop insurance, 2021 will be the next chance that farmers have to make choices about buying crop insurance and which type of crop insurance. So let's go to, well, let's see. You'll see this list here. a whole variety of things, lots of activity in the 2018 Farm Bill around crop insurance, which is part of a long-term trend to shift more federal support in agriculture to the idea of crop insurance and risk management and away from direct subsidies. That's been going on for at least 10, 12 years now. So 2018 Farm Bill was a lot of fine-tuning. We're not going to cover dairy, which is another whole webinar in and of itself. This is all strictly on crop insurance, although there's some livestock provisions mixed in with whole farm revenue protection, but we'll get to that. So next slide, Haley, let's get started. Okay, crop insurance education. This is actually something that I tried to work on when I was inside USDA working in the Secretary's office. Because no matter what Congress says about organic and crop insurance, and it was 2001 when organic first became recognized as good farming practices for purposes of crop insurance. Here it is 20 years later, and we're still trying pretty hard to make organic crop insurance work better. And one of the key issues is that because crop insurance is mediated and distributed and sold through private sector parties, that is, the crop insurance agents and adjusters, their knowledge of organic is really crucial to how it works. So in the 2018 Farm Bill, it mandated that USDA establishes requirements for educating these providers about generally conservation activities and conservation-related agronomic practices, including organic and sustainable practices. So this is recognizing that some of the changes that Congress and the USDA have desired to have happen with respect to making crop insurance more available and work better for organic producers has been bottlenecked by the knowledge and familiarity of the providers. So next slide. Implementing this crop insurers education is being done through what's called the Standard Reinsurance Agreement, which is the master contract the USDA renews every year for the crop insurance providers, called the AIPs, the Approved Insurance Providers. And it requires them to be providing this education to their salespeople and adjusters. And you see there on this slide the specific quote from the 2020 Standard Reinsurance Agreement contract. So next slide. We don't really know what's happening with this. I have not been able to find evidence that any of the approved insurance providers have actually implemented such a curriculum. But USDA Risk Management Agency is supposed to audit what's happening with these AIPs sometime in 2020. They generally do an audit of all the AIPs related to their performance under the Standard Reinsurance Agreement every 3 or 4 years. And it's supposed to happen this year. Whether or not that happens in the current USDA remains to be seen. So, bottom line here is if you have issues with your crop insurance provider understanding organic or not understanding how crop insurance is supposed to work for organic growers, that's something that you should feed back to USDA or your growers association or otherwise. So, next topic, cover cropping. which has been a huge issue for crop insurance in the last few years, as cover cropping has become more widely recognized as important for conservation and soil health and climate change. The system has been grappling with this problem that crop insurance doesn't deal well with cover cropping, specifically with when the cover crop is terminated and how that affects the planting date, because planting date is the key thing around which a lot of crop insurance rules rotate. So in the Farm Bill in 2018, it said unequivocally cover cropping is considered a good farming practice, and crop insurance providers cannot deny or refuse crop insurance claims because of cover cropping. Next slide. So there are new guidelines now for how cover crops can be terminated, and the timing for either mowing or plowing in or crimping your cover crop, depending on which part of the country you're in. So these guidelines were issued in 2019. You see the link there to the specific guidelines, and these are just being put to the test probably as we speak in some parts of the country. People are just doing their spring cover crop termination, and we'll be watching closely to see how well this works. Next slide. Should be a map there of the different regions of the country. The country is divided up into 4 zones under these new guidelines. And you can see this map illustrating which parts of the country are in which zone, and just a very brief description of the essence of the zone assignment in terms of when the cover crop has to be terminated relative to planting. So we may have questions on that. This is a big change and hopefully a major factor in improving soil health generally and on farmland across the country. Third topic, whole farm revenue protection. Yeah, next slide. Whole farm revenue protection is a relatively new form of crop insurance. It's been available most parts of the country now for about 5 or 6 years, but very slow to get a lot of adoption or use. But it's supposed to be designed for diversified production and lend itself to organic and smaller scale, perhaps direct marketed production. It's been played with a lot each year, adjustments made in terms of how this actually works. It's a different kind of animal for both USDA and the crop insurance providers. So these changes in the 2018 Farm Bill are attempting to make it more palatable and more worthwhile for growers to use. So the main features of the changes in 2018, as you can see in this slide, increased the coverage up to $2 million and can cover up to 50% of crops purchased for resale. I guess I should say, the basic idea of whole farm revenue protection is just what it says, that it's ensuring overall revenue rather than the specific production or specific price on a specific crop. It can encompass a number of crops, and it's designed to smooth out changes in overall revenue of the farm. Next slide. few more details on these WFRP changes. It smooths things out by using a 5-year average, and it includes new options for what happens in a bad year in terms of how you integrate that bad year into your 5-year baseline and how you make your claim in that bad year. So without going too far into the weeds, these bullets here just indicate that 60% of the average revenue is what's used to calculate the approved revenue for the upcoming crop year. And then that's an increase. However, you can take a different tack on how you deal with these losses, and you can drop the lowest year revenue from your 5-year revenue history and just sort of eliminate that from your 5-year average, which resembles a little bit more what regular multi-peril crop insurance calculations do. Next slide. Beginning farmers. As part of a continuing general interest in Congress and the department in specifically helping beginning farmers and ranchers, crop insurance now has a 10% discount for whole farm revenue protection type policies if you have less than 10 years of farming experience. So, one of the basic problems is that in crop insurance for a while has been that it works better if you've had many years of farming experience and data about your losses. So beginning farmers were kind of penalized because of that. So this is one of the ways that Congress is attempting to ameliorate that for beginning farmers and ranchers. And one of the things that Congress likes to do is tell USDA, well, you have to have a specific person or office to deal with this topic. So 2018 Farm Bill created a new National Beginning Farmer and Rancher Coordinator and required that USDA have state-level coordinators. And crop insurance services are part of this national network. So next slide. This national assignment of responsibility for servicing beginning farmers and ranchers. So just a couple of weeks ago, USDA named the new national coordinator, a woman named Sarah Campbell, who's a rancher in Maryland, has a direct market beef operation called New Roots Farm. And she is coordinating the state level coordinators for beginning farmers and ranchers across all these different agencies: Farm Services, Natural Resources Conservation, Risk Management, and Rural Development. So she's got a big job. And the USDA has had this farmers.gov website for a year or so now, specifically as a clearinghouse for beginning farmers and ranchers. So it's actually a pretty attractive site, useful information, relatively easy to find. And so that's a big chunk of the Farm Bill implementation there for beginning farmers and ranchers. Next slide. One of the more arcane parts of the whole risk management system is what's called non-insured crop insurance, non-insured crop disaster assistance, otherwise known as NAP. And this is a program that was created outside of the regular risk management agency normal third-party crop insurance system for crops that couldn't qualify for crop insurance for one reason or another. And it's administered by the Farm Services Agency, as distinct from the Risk Management Agency. And so depending on where you are in the country, certain specific crops are eligible for NAP. Organic has been approved for NAP since my time in the department about 2012 or 2013. I think we were able to do that. Changes in the 2018 Farm Bill for NAP increase the amount of gross revenue that can be covered and increase the payment limit for claims on losses. I don't know how good the data is on organic growers using NAP, but I think it's fair to say it's an underused option for organic growers in many parts of the country. And hopefully more education about this will help organic growers and transitional growers be able to figure out if this is a good option for them. Next slide. And specialty crops are becoming a much bigger thing in the Risk Management Agency. This also reflects the long-term progress of specialty crops, that is, fruits, nuts, and vegetables, being a focus of federal policy and the Farm Bill, because up until about 10 or 12 years ago, there was very little support for specialty crops in the Farm Bill. Been a number of different kinds of programs created, and now that interest in specialty crops is penetrating into crop insurance. So USDA is still in the early stages of figuring this out. One of the things the 2018 Farm Bill is, again, designated a special coordinator and specialty crop liaison in each USDA regional office to provide more direct hands-on assistance to specialty crop growers. And you'll see the website link there on this slide, 2 RMA's pages, which again I think are quite attractive and relatively easy to use. RMA is doing a fairly good job of making this pretty arcane stuff accessible, at least at the first levels of inquiry. So specialty crops is, an important new area of growth for risk management, and we'll see how that's going. Next slide. And hemp. This is one of the biggest and fastest moving areas of crop insurance changes resulting from the 2018 Farm Bill. Of course, one of the biggest things that the 2018 Farm Bill will be known for was its legalization of hemp production. And hemp is defined as an eligible crop for federal crop insurance. It is covered by both the regular multi-peril crop insurance and whole farm revenue protection. But of course, there's a lot of fine-tuning and devils in the details of exactly how much THC is in your hemp crop. And that is a determining factor in whether or not losing a hemp crop can be covered by crop insurance. So if you are interested in hemp for next year, or you're trying this year and have a crop insurance contract, these details are crucial. Next slide. And this is just a clip of the press release from February 6th about this implementation by Risk Management Agency. And it'll be very interesting to see whether or not this turns out to be a big piece of business for the crop insurers and how it works for the growers. And then one last topic here, local food crop insurance. The 2018 Farm Bill put in a provision telling the Risk Management Agency to do some study about whether or not current crop insurance programs are adequately mitigating the risk for local food producers, and whether or not there's some new type of product or changes to the existing products that can better serve local food crops producers. And that's due in December of 2020, that feasibility study. This is a fairly significant potential sleeper for many producers in the organic and transitional sector, and we'll see what RMA makes of it. Okay, next slide. Should have mentioned at the beginning that we were going to do this, but here are just a few important links relative to the current pandemic crisis and crop insurance and other kinds of support that's being created for farms. All three of the emergency bills that Congress passed in the last few weeks have at least some item relative to agriculture and food. So these bullets here, the first one is guidance that was released by Risk Management Agency specific to crop insurance. They've added some flexibilities in terms of payment dates and waiver of interest and penalties if you're late paying your crop insurance premium, and a couple other, way down in the weeds details about how crop insurance contracts and claims will be handled, trying to give more flexibility to producers. These other three bullets are general resource pages that Haley and OFRF have identified as being very useful and well worth your time to look at them, because there are some surprising things that you might not have heard about relative to support for farmers. And those will be good places to continue to look at as more information comes in and things get updated. So we're going to do questions after Mark Schonbeck's presentation. So Mark Schonbeck, I'll hand it off to you to tell us about soil health and its ability to help manage risk on the farm.
Okay, so Mark, you've got control of the slides now, Schonbeck, and
Okay,
so you can just click on the screen and activate it there.
Okay.
Oh, you got to hit resume the slideshow on the top left there. You got to go up just a little bit. Yeah.
There. Okay.
There you go.
There we go. Okay, thanks. All right. Well, we've been talking about risk and risk management in organic farming or farming in general. And I don't need to belabor the point that farming is very risky business. You can have bad stands. You can have all kinds of weather problems. Weeds, pests, and diseases are a continual issue. And then sometimes nutrient deficits in the soil. And the ones I circled in that red box, those are the ones that climate change is, for the most part, aggravating, intensifying these risks. One of the things that happens as the climate changes, the distribution ranges of weeds and pests and plant pathogens will change. And another thing that organic farmers often face, especially in the transition phase, like if they're taking land that's been in a conventional production and they transition to organic, they're faced with some real soil health problems. This is a picture of a field, or some farmers called me up and said, I don't know, we set our crops out like usual and they're just not growing. And turns out they had spent their first 2 years of learning good organic farming on some pretty nice land, and then they moved to this site and took over land that had been under conventional management and plowed up this field, and there was severe compaction, extremely low levels of phosphorus, and almost no soil life, and that's what happened. So this is where healthy soil improves the risk picture. We've been talking a lot in Organic Farming Research Foundation about building soil health as a risk management practice. So we'll look at each of these problems that are that can create crop losses and how a healthy soil improves that. Poor stands often result because there's a surface crust in the soil, or the soil surface layers are just generally compacted. And when you open up that surface, you have good tilth, good crumb structure, then the seedlings pop up really easily. If you have a terrific storm and it rains too much at once and you have saturated soil, or you have a brief flooding event, a healthy soil will drain more quickly after that heavy rain. And then when the rains shut off and you get into heat and drought, the moisture holding capacity is much better because you have more organic matter. And again, you have that open structure. A healthy soil is about 50% pore space, and of that, 25% can be filled with moisture. The soil profile is open all the way down, to water table or bedrock, and that allows plant roots to get deeper and deeper and use subsurface reserves. Another thing about healthy soils are biologically active and biodiverse. That tremendous hive of microbial activity tends to suppress diseases. It basically crowds them out, and some of those beneficial organisms directly feed on pathogens. And the nutrient deficits are also generally ameliorated when you have that biological activity. The nutrient cycling is enhanced. And overall, all of these factors will enhance the resilience of its crop itself. It can put up with weeds, pests, and disease and rough weather more easily. Okay, so I mentioned climate change. It's an aggravator of weather-related crop losses, as we know. For the most part, you're getting more extremes. The storms are more violent. The droughts are longer and hotter. The rains are even heavier. So there is an increased risk of having a heavy crop loss and needing to resort to an insurance indemnity payment. Hopefully you're covered. And on the other hand, as I mentioned, soil health, the healthier the soil, the more resilient the crop is to the slings and arrows of rough weather. Another thing that healthy soil does is it contributes to carbon sequestration, partly just simply by supporting better crop growth. There's more root development, more root exudates, so that soil tends to accumulate and hold organic matter. On the other hand, the fact that the weather is hotter and the rains are more erratic will tend to intensify soil organic matter loss, which translates into carbon dioxide emissions, which means we're adding a little bit more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. If the soil gets really stressed, the nutrient cycle can break down a bit, and there's more nitrous oxide being lost. So you have a vicious cycle going on at the same time that farmers must work as hard as they can to maximize soil health and increase those positive interactions. Now, soil health practices will reduce risk in the long run, but there's always a little bit of cost and a little bit of risk associated with it. We'll take cover crops, for example. The USDA Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program, or SARI, conducted 5 years of farmer surveys on cover crop use and estimated the benefits that both the farmers saw subjectively and that were objectively measured in yields. And then in 2019, they analyzed all that data and came up with something called cover crop economics. Excellent bulletin. Anyway, we know that cover crops, they add the organic matter, they feed the soil life, fix nitrogen, retain and recycle other nutrients. They basically enhance all of those biological soil functions and physical structure functions that we want to see in a healthy soil. And indeed, 85% of the farmers in these surveys cited healthier soil as one of the main reasons they continue to cover crop. About 2/3 found that it helped with weed management, including the management of herbicide-resistant weeds on non-organic farms, and yield stability. In 1 year, there was a severe drought, and those who grew cover crops often had a 10% improvement in yield, whereas the years of normal to heavy rainfall, it was more like a 2 or 3%, but there's that stability factor. And in overall improved net returns, 1/3 of them reported that they were getting more profit, more income. Oh, okay, I forgot to, this is a kind of a phased slide. You can see on the right, that is a field. There's 2 fields in Central California, in the Central Valley, where they grow a lot of vegetables through the summer on irrigation. And then during their long, rainy, mild winter, it's actually fallow. Now, on the right hand, it was left bare fallow. And on the left hand, the farmer planted a wheat cover crop. It rained 2 inches. It's a pretty heavy rain for that area, but it's nothing extreme. And Dr. Zahinger Kabir, whose name should be appearing as a credit for these photos, he took those and gave me permission to use them. He's with the NRCS in Davis. This is a tremendous difference in outcome from that rain. It turned the bare field into a lake. You can imagine the soil degradation and loss of biological activity that's occurring in those anaerobic conditions. On the left, the wheat field is still a wheat field. It absorbed every drop of that rainfall, and the wheat is continually feeding that soil and reducing risk of difficulties in the summer. Okay, so looking at soil health practices, risks and payoffs, there is a cost of seeding, and you got to learn how to use a cover crop, when the best time to plant it, when the best time to terminate it. You can have, you know, the cover crop can fail. You can have a delay in planting or other field operations. And that water use in dry regions or drought years, that issue of dry regions, that's why the Risk Management Agency and NRCS worked out those different zones as to when the cover crop should be terminated in relation to cash crop planting. And then the cover crop economics study showed that the cover crops pay off most after several years of use. These the costs are the same year after year, and in fact, the first year there may be more because you're on that learning curve. You may be getting a new planter to get the seed in, but after several years of use, you really start to see the benefits, and they work best as part of an integrated soil health system, reducing tillage, maximizing diversity and coverage of the whole crop rotation, maybe integrating livestock. That's when you get your greatest benefit. And also when you have specific goals in mind. If you know that soil compaction is an issue, you might choose different ones than if you're looking for weed management. Rotationally grazing cover crops improves the picture. And then down at the bottom, I hope that's you can see the whole statement there. When cover crops are cross-shared through something like the EQIP or the Conservation Stewardship Program, that's when they really pay off. Okay, so now how does the Farm Bill help with this? A number of ways. The 2018 Farm Bill had a fairly strong theme in support of soil health. The Environmental Quality Incentives Program, or EQIP, includes definition for soil health planning as part of an EQIP contract. Soil testing for soil health. Soil health is included as one of the purposes in the crop rotations practice. Soil remediation is emphasized for urban agriculture. And one phrase that has appeared for both of the working lands conservation programs is a purpose to adapt to, help farmers adapt to and mitigate against increasing weather volatility, basically climate change. And the On-Farm Conservation Innovation Trials is a program within EQIP. There's a strong emphasis in soil health systems, cover crops, resource-conserving crop rotations, and water nutrient management. And there's also part of that is a soil health demonstration trial. This is going to bring new soil health management practices into these demo trials. And then the program needs to report back to Congress the outcome of these efforts. Conservation Stewardship Program, likewise, one of the purposes is to manage the program to maximize soil health. and prioritize soil health in ranking criteria and payments. Again, that same phrase regarding the climate and the weather. There has been an organic initiative within EQIP for a number of years. Now it is included in CSP as well. And there'll be a new payment for comprehensive conservation planning and increased payment rates for 3 major soil health practices: cover crops, 125% of the base rate; resource conserving crop rotation, 150%, and then advanced grazing management, rotational grazing practices adapted to your region, that is 150% as well. Okay, Conservation Reserve Program introduces this new sub-program called Soil Health and Income Protection Program. This allows a farmer to put 15% of their cropland, the least productive, most depleted or degraded cropland soils, into a 3 to 5 year contract. And they only get 50% of the regular CRP rental rate, but they're getting a little bit of payment to actually take those 3 to 5 years and restore that soil, basically putting into a sod crop or a series of cover crops or other practices or systems. And then that they'll be out of production during that time. And then it also expiring conservation reserve land into CSP, EQIP, or certified organic in order to maintain the soil health benefits of that period in the reserve. And there's a new grassland conservation initiative as well. Then beginning in socially disadvantaged farmers and veteran producers, the EQIP advanced payment is now at least 50% rather than just up to 50%. And NRCS is mandated to ensure that beginning and socially disadvantaged and veteran producers know about this option and can apply for it when they apply for their EQIP contract. And the programs for the Soil Health Income Protection Program, the terms are even better. They get 75% of the regular CRP rate and then 50% cost share on the seeds they use to restore that land. And then the Conservation Reserve Transition Incentives Program has been around for a while, 2 extra years of payment when the landowner transfers the use of that land to a beginning or socially disadvantaged or veteran producer. This is now available to all landowners. They don't have to be themselves retiring from farming. If they have some expiring CRP acres and they make it available to one of these groups of farmers in one of these constituencies, they receive the benefit. And the producer, of course, must implement sustainable practices, and the program's funding has been increased, and some of the program rules have been made more flexible. And then soil health priority and research programs has definitely been increased. Organic Research and Extension Initiative itself has done a lot of soil health research, which is the basis of a lot of those guides that Haley was showing earlier. Permanent funding is now at $50 million a year by 2023. It's not there yet, but it will be by the end of the Farm Bill cycle. Increased emphasis on soil health and other research programs. And there's a public database that the USDA must establish to review conservation practices and outcomes, and then report this periodically to Congress, what has been the actual benefit in terms of soil health and water and nutrient management of our increased emphasis through conservation ag research. And, oh yeah, I just wanted to say the devil is in the details. One of the weaknesses in the Farm Bill is it did not actually increase conservation funding. It is still at the same level. And in order to expand some of these other programs a little bit, include the new elements, the Conservation Stewardship Program funding is actually down. We're hoping that'll be reversed the next time the Farm Bill comes around. And implementation, the program rulemaking and public comment, the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition has been watching this very closely. I've been helping them with some of the analysis. An agency staff training and program delivery. One of the interesting developments is NRCS is implementing a new tool to address all conservation program applications. It's Conservation Assessment and Ranking Tool. has a lot going for it, and at the same time there are some concerns about how it is going to accommodate the different purposes or different focuses of the different conservation programs. The good news is if a farmer comes in and says, I want to take better care of my land, and the NRCS gets together with them, and this tool will help them identify the best way to do that, and it will reduce risk. Anytime you improve your resources, improve that resiliency, your risk is generally reduced. And also a lot of training and technical assistance to producers in implementing these practices. There is a new piece of legislation introduced by Representative Shelley Fingry. The Adult Agriculture Resilience Act will increase research and conservation funding with a goal towards improving soil health, resiliency to climate change. I did not have a slide that specifically addresses the pandemic that we're all facing. And no, healthy soil is not a direct cure for coronavirus infection, but if your farm needs to recover from the direct and economic impacts, once this crisis is in the rear view mirror, the healthier your soil, the faster and easier it is going to be, more possible it is to get back on your feet and resume a profitable farming enterprise. Thank you for your attention. Sorry, I went a little bit over.
Okay, thank you, Mark. We have a lot of comments and questions that are in the queue, so we'll be moving on to those pretty soon. But we have a couple of comments about whole farm revenue protection and that option. And one of them, which I thought was very important here, it says that whole farm revenue protection is only available to beginning farmers with at least 3 completed years of farming. So for them, NAP is the only alternative. So I guess I just want to acknowledge here that we have on the webinar Jeff Shashensky, who has been putting in a lot of comments. And after we get to a couple more questions, I'll read some of his very helpful comments. Oh, good. He put in the chat box here, maybe Jeff, if you could resend that to all the attendees as well as the panelists. He mentions that NCAT ATRA has great resources on crop insurance and an ORVI study on organic farming and crop insurance called Is Organic Farming Risky? We recorded a presentation at one of the Organic Agriculture Research Forums of Jeff Shashensky talking about this. And so if you go to the eOrganic YouTube channel, you can find that as well. If you go to the eOrganic YouTube channel and look up Is Organic Farming Risky, you'll find Jeff giving his presentation. He says they also have information and a webinar on insurance and whole farm revenue protection. So thank you, Jeff. Okay, we have some other questions here. I'm in South Carolina and most of the farmers markets in the area are closed. Is there any program that can help cover the losses I might have since the markets are closed and I can't get any business? Like help with cash flow since I have none but have expenses. So does anybody have any information on that?
This is Mark Schonbeck. I would say look on the NSAC link to how the recent $2 trillion package for COVID relief. There is a provision in there to help local and regional farmers stay afloat through the impacts, to the market impacts of this outcome. And yeah, thank you, Haley.
Haley just sent that in the chat box, sir.
Yeah. Now, the devil again is going to be in the details. This was just passed through Congress. I know that a number of sustainable ag organizations, VABF, Pennsylvania Association for Sustainable Agriculture, have worked with farmers to find alternative ways to maintain their markets. And these are situations like some farmers markets will be allowed to stay open if they do a prepay, pre-order, pre-package and delivery, so that you minimize that social contact and risk of contagion, but still deliver locally. There may be doing, thank you, Jeff. It's good that to hear that FSA is looking into loans to help deal with this kind of loss. I know there's a lot of strategizing out there. Very interesting webinar I was on yesterday with some growers at VABF who are, now some of it some of these are also CSA growers, so they're able to modify their CSA to a pre-order and drive-through pickup. And they have all kinds of, basic CDC recommended sanitation measures to make sure to minimize exposure. I don't have a lot of details, but I know there is a lot happening to help with that. It's a very good question, a very important question.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, so here's a question about why do you think more farmers aren't using cover crops? Okay, the person says he knows it's improving, but it's still a small percentage of farmers overall.
This is Mark Schonbeck again. I would say, and Mark, please jump in too if you have more to add. I think it's going to take a little while for farmers to fully understand that not only is cover crop, and it's a long-term investment. If you're really up against the wall and you're barely, making ends meet, it's hard to suddenly spend $50, $60, $100 more per acre to put this cover crop in just to feed the soil. And I think the information that we now have cover crop established is a good farming practice for the purposes of crop insurance. That may take a little while to trickle down and be more widely known. Another thing is it's frankly challenging if you have a crop growing that's a long season crop like field corn, and you're in a fairly short growing season like you have in Minnesota. It's a little harder to fit a cover crop in the winter there. So I think there needs to be more research to advance the practice. I think there needs to be more outreach. A lot of education and outreach, successful demonstrations, I think, are going to help address this. But I admit, I sometimes ask myself why more land isn't cover crops.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Smart Cliff, I just, this is the first year that the crop insurance provisions related to crop insurance or related to cover crops have been in place. So, that is an important breakthrough, and yeah, it'll take a year or so for that to settle out.
Okay, we had another question about whether there are any special programs for women farmers for the Whole Farm Revenue Protection Program.
I don't believe so. It's possible that there is something buried in there, but women farmers are in what we call socially disadvantaged farmers don't have special provisions within WFRP yet, as far as I know. Jeff may be able to provide more.
Yeah, he also agrees that there are not any special programs for women. So yeah, let's see. We had another question. Do you think? This is one for Mark. Okay, I guess it's more for Mark Schonbeck. Do you think that the termination dates that they talked about can be arbitrary, since the timing is so dependent on weather, soil type, history of practices? So why not leave the termination date of cover crops up to the farmer's judgment?
Really good question, and that is something that has been discussed, how to make that more flexible. I was kind of staring at that map and say, wait a minute, why is Southern Oregon 35-day delay? They get 30 inches of rain a year. Wait a minute. I know some parts of them don't get that much. It is going to depend on so many factors. What cover crop you're growing, what production crop you're growing after it, how good your soil is in terms of moisture holding, and how much rain you've had. I mean, some of these places that are semi-arid, they average 11 inches, and they'll get 25 inches one year and 3 inches the next. And on the 25-inch year, you could probably grow that cover crop up to 10 or 15 days. Some cover crops are very shallow rooted and extremely moisture efficient. Others are drought resilient because they are water hogs. They just clean up the soil profile down to 6 or 7 feet. Alfalfa is one of the worst. Pearl millet is deep rooted, but a little bit more, quite a bit more frugal. There are so many variables, and it will probably take time to refine those guidelines. And that is a really good question that I don't have an answer for. If Jeff is on the line or if Mark Lipson can chime in.
Well, the reality is that everything in crop insurance is ultimately limited by the actuarial risk that the insurers are taking on. You know,
Right.
They're the ones who have to cover the losses. So the guidelines in this case are determined by what little information they have that can actually give them confidence in their actuarial risk management themselves as the payers of claims. So I agree that it's going to take a lot more data on what actually matters to success of the crop relative to how you manage your cover crop in order to have better rules for how that works under crop insurance.
Okay, let's see. Under the whole farm revenue protection system, how small can a farm be to qualify for that? Like how much revenue do they have to be part of that?
Well, I don't think there's any minimum amount of revenue. That may vary by the crop insurance agent, but the question is going to be what's it worth to the farmer to insure that small amount? You know, what's the premium going to be? And that's going to depend on where you are and what your experience profile is. But I don't think there's a hard minimum in WFRP. But an insurer might not make a policy option available for, you know, a super small amount because they wouldn't be able to charge you enough to cover it.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to go back to a question that we had from someone who emailed us yesterday. And I know after the webinar, we're planning to send you a longer email response. But, you know, since the question might be interesting to others as well, we'll share it. Okay, so he asked, when we talk about soil health, are we talking about the soil that we grow crops in or soil in general? If an organic production system isn't growing in the soil like mushrooms or sprouts, or I know he was talking about hydroponic system, is soil health an issue? And if it's not an issue, why does the health of the soil become an issue with indoor or container systems?
This is Mark Schonbeck. I saw that earlier, and I think I sent you a fairly extensive answer. Did you?
Yeah,
see
I'm not sure he got it yet because I was going to forward it to him. So
yeah, go ahead and forward it.
So I'll go ahead and do that right after that. I didn't have time, but I will. Yeah.
I would just briefly say that organic farmers are not against hydroponics. They are against calling it organic because it's like comparing two very different things. Organics system is about a soil health enhancing system for the soil you're using to grow food, your cropland, your orchard, your pasture, your range, and also the non-cropland area around the farm, the whole farm ecosystem. But it is a soil-based system, so that is why that has been very controversial. So I think that when we're talking soil health, I mean, it is true. We want to get our soils healthy everywhere. We want, you know, as much of the city as possible to be in healthy soil, whether it's under ornamental plantings or urban farms or whatever. It is a good question. And we also need to do a life cycle analysis to determine the whole environmental footprint. Like you could install a hydroponic facility on a city rooftop or on an abandoned lot that had been so compacted and contaminated that you can't use it for anything. Or you could go on to an area that's already growing living vegetation and say, okay, we're going to put an installation here. You can just cover that whole footprint. So you're taking that soil out of production in order to have the hydroponic thing. So it's very context specific. And Very interesting comments about water conservation and energy conservation and such, which is more efficient, the hydroponic or the field production. And that'll depend also on your climate. Like I could see if you've got a saline alkaline soil that's got a lot of carbonates in it, and you are try to grow vegetables on 10 inches of rain a year, you'd be dependent on irrigation water, etc. There's a lot of cost there. So it may make sense to take a hydroponic approach there. It may save a lot of water.
Okay, thanks, Mark. I'm going to just read through a couple of the many comments here by Jeff Shashensky, who really is knowledgeable about this topic. So thank you, Jeff. And I think people will be interested in your comments here. Any legally defined farms can apply for whole farm revenue protection and crop insurance. And according to their research, they're at NCAT ATRA, which includes a survey of crop insurance agents, it suggested that at least some agents that service organic producers are comfortable serving them. So some of them are knowledgeable about organic production. Let's see, I kind of keep going here. Okay, so it says here, WFRP, whole farm revenue protection, is probably the best and easiest way to deal with specialty crops, since there is not revenue-based products for most insurance for most specialty crops, and many specialty crops have very limited geographic availability. And again, they have a website on whole farm revenue protection and hemp insurance. Okay, so let me just keep going here. If anybody else has a question, we still have a couple more minutes, so feel free to type it into the chat box. Let's see. The National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition has been working very hard to improve the whole farm revenue protection, and there are many ways to improve this product, and they're not sure yet how hard the Risk Management Agency will respond. So thanks for all those comments there. Okay. Let's just leave another minute here just in case anybody has any questions. And meanwhile, I just want to let you know that you will get a copy of the presentation along with our follow-up survey today. And this webinar has been recorded, and you'll be able to find it on the eOrganic YouTube channel within 1 to 2 weeks. So I'm just going to check. I don't see any more questions. Oh, wait, we have one more here. Good. Someone wasn't shy here. It's the last one here. It says, please reiterate that farmers who are interested in whole farm revenue protection should push agents to explore the option with them. If an agent says they can't do it, they should move to another agent. We've heard of many instances of agents not knowing about WFRP or telling producers that they aren't eligible for whatever reason. It says it was baloney. They just didn't want to spend the time writing the policy. Please don't quote me, but we won't say who this is. But anyway, this person just is clearly encouraging producers to find an agent who will explore the option with them. So thanks for that comment. Do you have any last comments, Mark or Haley?
Alice, just on that, online I did answer by text a question about how you find a crop insurance agent. There's a USDA agent locator page.
Oh, let's type that link into the chat box there so that everybody sees it. Let me just find that here.
It's rma.usda.gov.
Okay, yeah, here it is. I'm just going to copy it here.
Information tools.
Okay, yeah, okay, I've got that in the chat box as well for everyone in case you'd like to. Yeah, that's a really great answer there that I'm sure some of the folks online will be interested in. So yeah, I'd just like to thank everyone who's online for all your continued good work in the face of this really strange and difficult time, and I hope you all stay healthy. Thank you all for the excellent questions and comments. And I hope you can join us next week. We're going to be having a webinar on April 8th on organic seed potato production. And yeah, so if anyone has any last comments, please go ahead. And then after that, we'll end the webinar. Okay, well, thank you all for joining us. And
bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks so much, everyone.
All right.